Let's talk about the West Indies quickly on this one now. But just overall, I mean, from fatigue that probably affected team selection as well, questions about the toss, especially in this test. Where do you think it mainly went wrong for the West Indies?
Well, that's a decent summary what you've said, but I actually think they probably have to improve regional cricket in the Caribbean. Because it's all very well to say, people didn't score enough runs, but you tell me who are the obvious candidates to replace these guys in the top order? Who are the obvious candidates? Because they actually, West Indies didn't have a specialist reserve opening batsman on this tour. And it's because there aren't people in regional cricket putting their hand up and saying, you've got to pick me with the amount of runs they're scoring. And I think it's very difficult to score runs on some of the Caribbean pitches. They're a bit better than they were, but they haven't been good for a little while. And, Cricket West Indies know this, and they're working hard to do it. And I'm afraid it's one of those slightly boring answers, which is I'm afraid these things take a bit of time. And England have been in the same position at various times. Regional cricket really matters. And you've always, whether it's the Caribbean or in England, got to get the domestic structure, regional structure right. And then I think the test team will largely take care of itself. The other thing was, I get why they didn't want to rotate the seamers. Shannon Gabriel, I think, is he's a terrific bowler, and he would have wanted to play, but the fact is you're asking an awful lot of those bowlers to put them through 3 tests, and while they gave everything every time, I think it did become a little bit more difficult to sustain the intensity. So I think it was probably a tactical error, and they probably should have refreshed the side for the second test. But it's easy to be critical, I actually didn't think there was that much difference between the sides. West Indies ran out of steam a bit, and England found their stride. You'd have to say over the last few days of the series, England started to sort of pull away a bit. But West Indies, as I say, they look very, very weary.
They do look very weary again, but I suppose I just want to pick your brain on this. This is observation of mine, and it's an observation that I know a lot of West Indians do have when it comes to batting. We see that the skill is there, we see that the talent is there, but the application is completely different. Like you say, when you look at the likes of Sibley and Burns and how they were able to churn out an innings that wasn't pretty, and then you see how, say, a Shea Hope got out today as well. Why are you playing that kind of a shot in a test match? And we see that very often. So do you think that there's an application issue in West Indies batsmen on a whole that's probably a little more suited to white ball cricket, and that's affecting this test batting setup?
I don't know that it's just Caribbean relevant, that. I think, if you're a young player growing up now, you probably see a lot and play a lot of T20, and it changes the way that you play, I expect. And I think the game has changed, not for better or worse, it's just changed. That's what happens. It's relevant today that you say that, and people will say that. I just wouldn't want to leap to sort of facile conclusion. But the issue is that Hope, who looked very good, was outplaying quite a big shot. And I'm afraid the fact is, 10 minutes after play finished, it poured with rain. Now there's a bit of a break in the rain right now, I don't know. But maybe if West Indies had battled for another 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe they would have got a draw. I mean, really, the margins sometimes are that small. I actually thought they battled generally pretty well. I don't think it would be easy to say, look, that was a poor shot. But actually quite a few of them were they were out to seam movement or whatever. I thought England bowled pretty well, and it was quite difficult conditions. By deciding to bowl first, you're really hoping that you take a lot of wickets in the first couple of sessions. And, they could actually have given player of the match to Ollie Pope. I mean, once someone gets an 11 for or whatever he got, you can't do that, can you? But Ollie Pope's innings of 91 in the first innings was pivotal. In a relatively low-scoring game, that was one of the only periods of play when batting looked quite straightforward. So they didn't really make the toss decision work for them, and it's always going to be more difficult batting in the fourth innings. But I wouldn't just say that they lacked application, really. I would say that there's quite a lot of people who aren't particularly suited to being top-order batsmen, and also that, maybe they're just not... It's not a particularly strong era, in my view, of Caribbean test batting. Well, it's not. And I know that some people are saying, could this be one of the great teams? It's nonsense. It's nonsense. There might be an issue. You could argue that the prevalence of white ball cricket has persuaded a few people to play more of that, to direct themselves in that. I don't know. I don't really see that way. Again, you've got to be careful not to jump for quick answers, and to suggest that Nicholas Perrin, who's played, I think, 3 first-class games, would suddenly be the answer. He might, but it's sort of wishful thinking. Equally, if Hetmeyer had come, I think he's a really good player, but he is a bit of a counter-attacking player. And would Bravo have made a difference? Again, he might. He won a test for West Indies in Antigua, but these conditions, does he have a track record of scoring runs here? He doesn't, you know. Maybe England are just better in England. I think they probably are, you know. It's 1988 since the West Indies side first won here. I wouldn't be that hard on them. They just... England haven't lost in England since 2014. It's no disgrace to lose 2-1. And equally, we shouldn't lose sight of the bigger picture, which is that West Indies came to England at a time lots of people wouldn't have done. And, I think everyone in world cricket owes them for that.